And I think we have Matt Nickerson with us, and he's self-muted, and we're moving on to you, Matt. So Matt Nickerson is with us he is the instructional technology specialist from Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Super proud to have him because he's an amazing person and has been doing some of the best leadership that we've seen nationally there in Anne Arundel. And I don't say that lightly. I'm actually very proud of his district for everything that they're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So good to have you here.
Yeah, wonderful to be here. So thank you for the invite last week. And I missed that we're not able to do these in person, like everything else that we're missing in person. But thank you for hosting these regional things. I've been checking in on some of the other ones around the country as well. So, and you're right, you guys are rich on data, lots of data. Yeah,
it's kind of a fire hose. Yeah, we just put a lot out there. So I'm excited to get your update because it's been a while. It's been several months. You've probably been through the same hurricane everybody else has been through on everything. Why don't you start us out with kind of what happened first? And do you want me to give you screen sharing rights?
Yeah, I was actually just clicking through looking for that.
Okay, here you go. 3, 2, 1. Okay, it's over to you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so I am familiar with Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, and some Zoom, but GoToWebinar is a little bit new for me. So yeah, like everybody else, we hit March and we weren't completely caught off guard, but we had started putting together, like I tend to be the Microsoft person in the district. We have some students who take courses in Blackboard, some that do Adobe Connect for some remote learning already, and we are mostly Google districts. We say we're a hybrid, Microsoft and Google, but basically when this was coming, all of us who had our little expertise in those four, Blackboard, Adobe, Microsoft, and Google, all made our preparations for training a whole lot of teachers really fast. And we realized very quickly that because we had so many teachers that already used Google Classroom, that ended up kind of being the one that we decided we just need to focus on one. And so there's 4 trainers in my district for technology. And when I say my district, I mean, we have 86,000 students, 128 schools. Each of those schools also has an e-coach, and the e-coach is a regular classroom teacher who's teaching something else full time. But then twice a year, we'll bring them in and do a full day of training. And so they're our contact within the building. And for any classroom teachers that have technology questions, they go to the e-coach first, and then they come to our office. So we had 4 people to train the entire district, and sorry about the dog barking, and realized that we just weren't going to be able to support that. And so we were able to harness those e-coaches to do a lot of the training for us, because we realized that we no longer have the luxury of being innovators. And that's what draws us into instructional technology, is what's the latest and greatest, what's the new thing that that you can do with technology, or how can you harness technology to do things that are hard or impossible to do without the technology. And that's really how I ended up moving from special education for 20 years into technology full-time for the last 5 years. It was I was harnessing the technology for universal design for learning and differentiation to try and accomplish, or at least approximate, what so many different IEPs were demanding in the classroom. So without technology, I won't say impossible, but literally it is impossible with or without technology, but you can get a whole lot closer by harnessing the technology. And suddenly we had to now reach teachers who, when you say open a new tab, they're like, what's a tab? Are you on the online version or the desktop version? I don't know, how do I tell? And so that's how we ended up just deciding we were going to focus on one tool, which for us was initially Google Classroom and Google Meet. However, I'm ironically here to share more Microsoft stuff, but a lot of what I have to share, particularly the first half, is going to be completely usable in Google as well. So I have just realized which slide I'm on here. I have some stuff on Microsoft Forms that will be completely applicable to Google Forms. And then I have a little bit on OneNote that really, there's nothing quite like OneNote. So what I have on my screen right now is a PowerPoint live session. So at the top of the screen, it says ppt.ms/myjxttep. So if you could all repeat that back to me. No, I'm just kidding. If you want to follow along on your own and pull up this PowerPoint on your own screen, what PowerPoint Live allows you to do is A, see it on your own screen, and B, have a live transcript going on the right-hand column. So if you would rather not watch me click through, but actually join yourself, I'm actually going to copy this into a new tab so you can see what it's like to be a participant. So this on the right-hand side, I now have a transcript of the entire session, including things that I said a while ago. I can change that from English into, I think we're up to about 3 dozen different languages here. So I haven't tried Croatian before. We'll see how that goes. I don't know Croatian, so I really don't know how that went. But this is just one of the other features that's available here. So as I go back to my screen and work my way through from one slide to another on my my participant screen, I am now going through as well. And I can always go back. So we're on slide number 3. I can go back to slide number 1 or 2 because we've been to those before. And I can click current slide to catch back up to where we are. Right, but that's what you're able to do if you, again, join yourself. So you can open a new tab and go there if you'd like. So this is me. I'm Matthew Nickerson. I'm at Dad Times 8 on Twitter. There's my email address. And I blog at theother-it.com, and that's instructional technology as opposed to information technology. So just a tiny bit more about my background. I do have 8 children. This was, well, she's 14 now, so this was, I guess, about 7 years ago. But this is the last time I had all 8 in the same picture. So that's why that's there. I have cut down a tree and chopped it up. That's what I did for fun this summer. I spent most of my time in front of a computer, and then I would get out and do that. And I just finished the 2nd edition of this book, so Transforming Education with Microsoft EDU, and you can find it on Amazon as well. All right, so there's kind of my background, but let's actually get into this. So the question that I was trying to answer is, how do you give meaningful and timely feedback, and how do you differentiate that feedback when we're not face-to-face and when we are completely doing remote learning? And so the 2 tools that I'm going to focus on are Forms and OneNote. There are some principles that will hold true that if you're not a Microsoft district, certainly almost everything I'll show you in Microsoft Forms, you can do in Google Forms. There's one piece at the end that's uniquely Microsoft. Some of what I'll show you in OneNote, there are ways to manipulate Google's platform where you can incorporate tools and drawing and keep in order to do some of these things. It's just a lot simpler in OneNote because OneNote is just, I just have never found anything quite as comprehensive. Again, with my background as a special educator, it was the first mainstream tool I ever found that had both text to speech and speech to text built in. I mean, we have our specialty programs, like we've used Kurzweil for years, where it's robust in terms of what accessibility features are there, but then students graduate from high school and they don't have Kurzweil anymore. The nice thing about the immersive reader features in OneNote and everything else from Microsoft is it goes on with them. It's in so many different products and it's mainstream. It really is a good model for universal design for learning. It's available to everyone. You turn on what you need, turn off what you don't need. All right, so my first example here is providing feedback in answer choices. And this is one you can definitely do in both Microsoft Forms and Google Forms. So I have both a screenshot here, and if you're following along in the PowerPoint, you can actually click to get into a sample form. But the idea here is for every single answer choice, you can give feedback. And the way I like to think about this is if I was standing live in the classroom and I asked this question and this is the answer my student gave, what would I say if they got it right? What would I say if this was the wrong answer they chose versus what would I say if this other answer was the wrong answer they chose? So you can completely customize the feedback that you're giving based on each answer choice, whether right or wrong. And while I realize that not every student embraces every learning opportunity that we give them, if you think this through, you actually can give students the opportunity to learn from an assessment. Okay, we use assessments to gauge what they've already learned, but how cool is that, that I can formatively assess them, and if they take advantage of this feedback and they don't just skip it and move on, did I get it right or wrong, and that's all I care about, they have the ability to actually learn from taking this assessment. Okay, so that's one example, and I'm going to go ahead and open that up, I hope. I'm hoping I can do this without exiting. All right, well, I'll have to just click here. There it is. So this is a quiz with some text in it up front. Right? And one of the things I'd like to point out, I mentioned Immersive Reader. So it is an entire suite of accessibility tools built right in. So here inside of the form, I can click on Immersive Reader. And if you haven't seen it before, I'll give it about 2 minutes because it's worth going through. Besides just having read aloud, the first tab is all about visuals. So the reality is not everybody who has a reading difficulty necessarily has a decoding issue. So here I can increase spacing, which for a lot of students, that makes a bigger difference than text size. If you've never seen reduce visual clutter on an IEP, that's actually a fairly common thing to see on there. It keeps 3 fairly simple fonts. We tend to make fun of Comic Sans a lot in our office. I'm not really sure why. It's really the only one of these that makes G's and A's the way we write G's and A's. So that's nice. And then you have different color backgrounds. So you have your night mode or dark mode that you're probably familiar with from tablets. And then there's like 24 other color choices here. And this is the equivalent, the digital equivalent of, say, having a color transparency on top of a page. And for those of you who haven't seen that before or think, why would you do that? That sounds really weird. Why would I put a color transparency on top of my page? I would encourage you to check out a website, irlen.org. That's IRLEN.org. They have decades of research into why this is effective for specific students. It's not a cut and dry thing like, oh, you have dyslexia, here, use a green color. Or you have ADHD, here, try orange. It's very individual, but again, I'd encourage you to check out their website if that's something that you find makes you curious. Next tab over is where you can break into syllables and also where you can color code parts of speech. If you're colorblind like me, then that doesn't help so much, but then you can turn on the labels. So any color that you turn on labels as well. And lastly, there's the line focus. This is the digital equivalent of a reading ruler. And notice that as when I click play, that the text will come up to this line as well, so the students don't have to visually track down the page. And you can choose 1, 3, or 5 lines at a time for that. There's a picture dictionary, and I picked the Jabberwocky, so most words probably aren't going to appear in here. That wasn't very smart. Yeah, so if the word appears, there we go, within Boardmaker, then it will appear here as well. I just need to pick the right line. And finally, there is over 80 different languages that you can translate into, languages and dialects. So for example, there's 3 different versions of Spanish. And depending which language you pick, some or all. So for example, in Spanish, all the tools that I just showed you are available here. All right, so all of that is Immersive Reader. So that's available within Forms. And if I choose randomly here, we'll put in Jabberwocky there. I'm just, again, picking some random answers here, then click Submit. Now, when I click to view my results, I will get some feedback on my results. So I get the right or wrong. Okay, that's marked pretty easy. But I can see, why was this a wrong answer? Well, because hand and tree don't rhyme. And I can actually scroll back up and see that, oh, yeah, hand and tree. Okay, that's not AABB. Again, I chose adverb, and it tells me why sort is a noun and why Vorpal is actually acting as an adjective there. So I can use my formative assessment to give immediate feedback to my students beyond just a score. All right, so that was my first one. Another way that we can use forms is via branching. So this is one that's, it is definitely possible to do in Google Forms, but it's much simpler to do branching in Microsoft Forms. You can see every single answer choice, you have the ability to choose where that answer leads you. And so what I did for this one was if you chose the correct answer, which in this case was foreboding, you'd go on to the next question. And if you chose an incorrect answer, it would take you to another section, and that section would be a definition and examples of peaceful, or a definition of fearful and some examples of that. And then at the end of that section, it returns you back to this question where you get a redo. And again, eventually you'll, even if you beat the odds and it takes you 3 times, you'll get back here and you get to foreboding, and then you can move on to the next question. So this one is designed for essentially reteaching or remediation based on if you choose the wrong answer, we're going to reteach you. And then you come back here and you get a chance to get it right. All right, so again, you can, if you're following along, click on the sample form and try that out. And I have that one right here. And you can tell this one has branching right here next to the title. That's what that symbol means. And so you can create sections. And what I've done with my sections is I have one reading selection, and then all of the other questions within that section are about that reading selection. And so the students will see one section at a time. So my first section is comparing 2 pictures. So I have a question about those images. After you answer that, then you see the next reading selection and the questions that have to do with that. Then as I scroll down, here's where if I answer foreboding correctly, then I get the follow-up questions, which words in the passage contribute to that tone. I don't really want you answering that about the wrong tone. So that's why we have you make sure that you understand why it's the right tone, why that's the right answer before you go on doing more with those questions. Okay, so that's a second option for forms. And then our next example would be, and this is where we'll kind of make our switch over to OneNote, that you can embed forms right inside of OneNote. So I have a OneNote notebook here, and I'm going to add a new page, and I'm going to click Insert. And one of my options to insert here is a form. So this connects my OneNote to my forms within Microsoft, and I can pick a random form assessment here. All right, this one's actually some feedback. So this one's not a quiz, this one's more a poll or survey. But you can see that you can answer it right in here. It also has immersive reader, so that feature comes with the form. So even though I have it embedded in something else, now actually OneNote is where immersive reader was invented, so no surprise that it works here. But when you embed a form somewhere, the immersive reader feature comes with it. So they can answer here. So if this was something for me to grade or to score, anything that has an answer key is going to grade it by itself. If this is one that I had set up with feedback, it would give that feedback as well. But there's also space here to show their work. Okay, they can explain their thinking because I've embedded this inside of OneNote. And so the next few things that we're going to look at are things that you can specifically do to give feedback in OneNote. And oh, I'm glad this is why I have my PowerPoint. That is not the next thing we're going to do. So the next thing we're going to do is specifically math tools. So I don't know how many math teachers we may or may not have in the building, but here's a typed math problem and here's a written math problem. And so I'm in the online version, which means this works on Chromebooks. So that's important. There's 3 versions of OneNote. There's a Windows 10 app There's a program, OneNote, and this is the online one. And I'm going to try to stick to the online one because this is what over half of our students have access to. So I've written down my little problem, and I'm going to go to the Draw tab, and I'm going to select. Okay, so I've got this in the online version, it's a box that you can select with. On the desktop version, you can actually draw a circle around it. So I've now selected this. I'm going to click on the word math, and I get a whole lot of options. So the first one is, if my handwriting's not so good and it couldn't read it, I can choose to fix it, or I can just choose to turn it into ink like this one over here. But I'm going to skip the inking and just go right into selecting an action. So I can graph it in 2D, and I can insert that on my page. Well, that's kind of cool. Give that some time to process. I can also solve for X or Y. I'm going to click to solve for X, and there's my answer. Uh-oh, I now have a program that my students can look up answers. Well, it gets worse.
Hey, Matt?
Yes.
We have some educators asking for the link again to follow.
Oh, sure. Okay, let me pull that back up. Actually, you know what? I think I had it on this page. No, we'll go back to here. I don't know where I put it. So it is ppt.ms. So that's like PowerPoint.Microsoft. And then slash, and the letters MY as in my. J is in, oh, I'm terrible at this. J is in Jersey, X is in X-ray, T is in Tom, T is in Tom, E as in extra, P is in Paul.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, great.
And that has links within it to some of these activities. The link to the OneNote actually comes at the end, where hopefully we'll have some time for you to actually practice in it.
Okay.
So I can solve for X, and then this is my favorite part. And this was actually designed not for teachers but for students. Not that teachers can't do this, but the idea here is my teacher gave me some work to do. I've tried some problems. I'm not really getting it. I can now make my own. So I can generate a quiz for myself. So this one really isn't designed for, I'm a teacher and I'm too lazy to make a quiz myself. This is really designed for the student to create extra practice problems for themselves. So they click to create a practice quiz, and they can choose anywhere from 3 to 20. I'll go ahead and make 5. And OneNote talks to Forms, and it creates this practice quiz. I'll move over here where I have a little more space. And again, there is an answer key. So I will be able to select my answers and then immediately see which ones I got right or wrong. If this is the teacher who's created this and shared it out with students, then the teacher can go to Microsoft Forms and see the results. Okay, get nice, easy grade there. But again, because it's inside of OneNote, the student can actually do their work right here on the page and then select their answers. And I'll just go through and randomly answer some and click to see results. I didn't do so well. I should probably spend a little more time and answer all the questions, right? Okay, so this is like all other technologies, subject to some glitchiness. So for example, I was expecting one other tool to be available here that didn't actually show up. So I'm going to try it again. There we go. So for some reason on that previous one, the show steps didn't pop up. So this time it was a little more cooperative with me. So you can see all of the steps for how to solve it. And again, Immersive Reader is here. So I can take a math problem, get the answer, show all the steps, and now open this in Immersive Reader, translate to the language that I need it in, and listen to the steps being read to me in my native language. So are there drawbacks to this? If you're trying to keep students from cheating, obviously, yes. But this is a resource that's available to students who may need it. Okay, so doesn't change your classroom management. You've got to still sell students on the idea that they're not learning anything from this, but if they don't try and solve it themselves, but they don't have to wait till tomorrow for you to explain it to them. If I work on this and I get stuck on it and I'm getting frustrated, I can open this myself. And one thing that, having worked in special education for 20 years and public education for 28 years, we've homeschooled all of our kids. And one thing that I can say about public school is that making independent learners is not our strong suit, right? I mean, that's more so the case in special education, but we specialize in learned helplessness, right? So this is a tool that can break that trend. This is the kind of tool that can help us move away from that and really train or retrain our students to move into an area of more independence. All right, so that is the math tools. Again, I'm just coming back to my PowerPoint as my checklist, just to make sure that we're not missing anything. All right, good. All right, so now we're gonna go into OneNote and look at different ways to give feedback in OneNote. And the way this portion works, I used this basic material one other time in the spring for a webinar, and the feedback I got was from one teacher. They thanked me because there was a specific way that they would like to give feedback that they didn't know a way to do that. And so for them, it was, here's my comfort level, here's what I desired, and you've made that a possibility. And a couple other students, and this one resonated more with me as the special educator, and different students with different needs and different learning styles. A couple other teachers came back to me and said, I like that there's so many different ways that I can respond all inside of one tool. So rather than, oh, thank you for showing me the feedback method that I'm comfortable with, it was more of a, I have different students who have different needs, and thank you for giving me a tool where I can give them that differentiated kind of feedback. So my different tabs here, my different pages, there's our link. Mention different ways to give feedback. So one is I can type feedback, and it's strange, these are so low on the page. One of the things that you can do with OneNote, it was originally a digital binder. It still is a digital binder. That's what its original purpose was. So you can insert pretty much anything inside of a OneNote notebook. So I inserted a page printout. So this is a Word file. I can actually get to the original Word file or a PDF version of it and edit it. And then I can come back here and it will update my printout. But this is the printout of that Word document. So it makes it kind of handy for what we're doing right now. I have a Word document I want to comment on. You can see I've got my cursor blinking up here. I guess that was just the last place I clicked on the page. It's kind of like PowerPoint or Google Slides where you can put something anywhere. Now, if I click inside of the actual printout, notice it's not letting me click in there, but that's okay. If I actually want to type, oh, somehow I did. If I actually want to type something right here, I can click out here and type what I need to type. And I can just drag it over there. So if I'm finding that I can't click exactly where I want to, that's okay. Click out in the open and then move it where you want. And all of the standard features of text are available. So you can make this bold print and whatever size you need. So you can type feedback on things that your students submit. Okay, so that's the first one. Then there's also this dictation button up here. So let's go to my dictate page. And I place my cursor where I want this to type. And there's a drop down here. Let's see what that does. Whenever there's dots and drop downs and things, go ahead and click on them. You're not going to break anything. There's usually good stuff hiding there. So you can see that these are the different languages that I can speak. Well, I can't, but these are the different languages that you can choose from to speak as you dictate. So now I'm going to click. Of course, I have to give permission for cameras or microphones. And now I start giving my feedback to the students, period. On the next line, enter. I can keep going. This is nonsense. Okay, so enter didn't work. The period worked. Exclamation mark. And click to stop. So my enter didn't work, so I can come in here and edit it, of course. And again, I can drag that over to whatever portion of their paper this is relevant to. So that's our second choice. So the nice thing about dictation is most of us speak faster than we can type. That is certainly true for me. And it also gives you the ability to grade and give feedback in situations where you might not be able to type. There's a OneNote app on your phone, so I could be on my phone dictating feedback that way. Anywhere that anywhere that I can be on my phone. I could be on a treadmill at the gym if the gym was open and actually completing work there. There's also digital inking, and so I can pick the draw tab and I can choose a highlighter. I can highlight this area and I can switch to different color, or I can pick a pen. You can see there's about 16 different colors available, both for the highlighter and the pen. You can circle. And where this really starts to get powerful is where I draw my arrow here, and now I go back home and I can dictate my response. Oh, I've got to be careful. I got to turn my inking off. Here we go. Choose where I want this to appear. Now go back home, turn on dictate. This is a great idea here. Expand on this some. Drag that over here. And now I'm using my inking in conjunction with my typing or my dictation. All right, so inking is another option. And that inking includes both pens and
Matt,
highlighters.
question for you. Are you finding that a lot of your teachers sort of were self-taught in a lot of this, or has there been a lot of lift in terms of training?
Not very much self-taught whatsoever. In fact, I thought about sharing this at the beginning, and I guess I should have. There's two different models, I guess, of the kinds of help that I give. One is troubleshooting or problem solving. So a teacher comes and says, I don't know how to give feedback, right? How do I do this in a remote setting? I used to bring all of my papers home and pull them out after the kids went to bed with my red pen and did the traditional thing. So that's one option, or one scenario is it's problem solving. Here's an issue. What kind of solutions does technology have for that? And then there's the, okay, I know how to create a Google form. I know how to set it up so that it automatically grades some of the questions, and then I go in and I auto grade or I manually grade, the open-ended questions and that sort of thing. And I know how to go into a Google Doc and add comments to the side. So I know how to give feedback. And in that case, sometimes it's me sharing something like, oh, wait, there's more I can do. So a lot of the fun part of my job is being able to share with people and they go, oh, I didn't even imagine that, right? And so occasionally we'll have somebody come to us and say, I was at a conference, I was watching somebody's YouTube video, I was listening to somebody's podcast. Can you help me figure out how to do this in our world with our platforms? But yeah, for the most part, like I described at the beginning, we've had to switch from the innovation to we need to get all 8,000 of our teachers up to a certain basic level of proficiency. And the nice thing is when we come out the other side, it used to be we'd just have trickles of teachers coming to find out the innovative stuff. Now we'll have everybody up at a certain level where we're really expecting, within a year or two that our intermediate and advanced courses will be a lot fuller because we'll have everybody at least up to that certain basic proficiency level. Yeah, so
And then
I don't know if I
talk to me
skirted the
about
question.
talk to me about the student proficiency level, because that's two different worlds, right? Um,
Uh, yeah, it's definitely two different worlds, but it's I think that we have pretty much laid to rest the idea that there are digital natives and digital immigrants in terms of our differing levels of expectation. We have long suspected that students aren't quite as naturally proficient as we thought. So, for example, we've known for a long time our preschool and kindergarten teachers will come back from the computer lab saying their kids were just in tears. And we're like, "What- they're the digital natives. What do you mean they were frustrated? Yeah, they've never used a mouse before. They grew up with an iPad, right? So there's certain things that yes, they're more open to. They don't have to unlearn certain things and relearn a new way. But at the same time, they're not just naturally across the board um, proficient, and differences still exist. Just because some of your students learn better through the digital technology, some of them that is not their preference. So it's nice that the option is now much more universal. But now the pendulum might be swinging a little too far, at least with the remote learning, where we don't have as much of an option to do things pencil and paper and face to face. But hopefully, when we are back together, that we will be able to provide a continuum of options to be able to meet those different needs. But yeah, that's kind of that's been the next stage for our district. Like we concentrated on getting the teachers trained first, on creating resources for teachers, on creating websites for them to go to, and now we're I feel like pretty late in the game, are starting to do the same thing for students. We have up to this point kind of relied on, if we train the teachers, then they can train the students for the tools that they're going to have them use. We have had some frustration with by choosing Google Meet as our sole means of doing virtual learning, and then the reliance that comes with that on Chrome extensions and add-ons, and then being frustrated with Meet is just changing so fast. They're updating so much about it, and extensions and add-ons come from third parties. And just because Google has done an update doesn't mean that all of the third parties that created those apps are keeping up with that. And so a lot of those are causing Meet to break. And so I very reluctantly, in certain cases, if I know the teacher, I'll share, well, you could do that. That part works in Teams right now. And literally, like out of 500 emails about Meet in the last 3 weeks, I think maybe for two or three teachers have actually approached that, because that's a whole new platform. So we've trained our kids on Meet, we've trained our kids on Google Classroom. Even if there's something that works better in Teams, the reality is, well, there's a whole lot of retraining. It's easy to take one teacher and work one-on-one and get them comfortable with it, but now if it's a high school teacher, they might have several hundred students that they then have to retrain on that. So that's prohibitive. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I look as a learning council at, either Microsoft or Google, I'm looking at, these are baseline tools. This is that you should know this stuff, right? And so it's been a heavy lift for most districts just to make sure everybody was on board and at least sufficiently trained, like you've been talking about, and showing how things are done in here. But then the next thing is the students. And then after that, it's like what they run into. And this is where I would love to hear from you more about the overall district, is that the building of every single lesson and all the interactions on every single thing, when you maybe have 500 standards to meet that year, this is where people are falling down, because doing almost everything inside, what is ostensibly a teacher-centric, got to do the lesson myself, rather than lean on some of the adaptive digital courseware. I know you guys have a new learning management system coming in. Some of those other things are like time, they'll use up time in the asynchronous learning environment, allowing the teacher to remold how they're executing on lesson delivery so that they're, in other words, it's rather than everything going through like a document hub or LMS, there's some things that are done tertiary, in tertiary ways, reading programs, math programs, History Channel, Discovery, all those other places. There's just tons. What have you found as you guys went through quarantine in terms of the mixing of things for synchronous versus asynchronous?
Yeah, so we have successes and failures I could share with you. So one that kind of jumps out is that Google changed some of their permissions, not permissions, but their privacy policy right as this was starting. And I find school districts in Maryland tend to be really, really on one end of the spectrum in terms of how we interpret SIPA, COPA, FERPA. And I know we're just south of Pennsylvania where there's lots of small, I don't know if it has to do with being smaller school districts, but I have a lot of friends in Pennsylvania where their districts are fine with the interpretation of the law being, if the school district wants to act as the parent surrogate in terms of getting permission to use something, that's just fine. And school districts in Maryland are like, oh, no, that is not how we read the federal law. And so Google changes their policy on YouTube, and suddenly my district says students under 13 are not allowed to use YouTube. Well, you know how many links we had in our curriculum? We write all of our own curriculum. So, and some, let me not go there. We write all of our own curriculum. And so if you have lots of links to YouTube and suddenly everybody's already reeling over everything else to do with remote learning, and now I can't access YouTube. So how do you solve that? Well, what I had proposed, and this gets into a thorny issue of copyright, and we have different people that took different opinions on this, but so we're using the YouTube video already in instruction. So we had some people who were okay with the idea of, well, one person in the district downloads that for all third grade teachers, uploads it to Microsoft Stream, and everybody in the district who teaches third grade has that one copy of that video to watch. And what we decided on instead was, no, let's have every single third grade teacher download that video from YouTube, put it in their Google Drive, and share their copy with all of their students. Well, you just multiplied the work times hundreds, right? Again, not taking a side one way or the other on copyright issues and things like that. Just the workflow there, we had a much simpler solution. There was 2 or 3 years ago, I wanted to have our curriculum writers consider putting some classes in a class notebook. So just to let you know our convoluted way of doing our own curriculum writing. We write everything in these massive, like 200-page long Word tables inside of Word. So everything's in a table inside of Word. So you've got a 200-page long table, which causes all kinds of sync issues because it just wasn't designed to work that way. But when we're all done writing, then we move it to Blackboard. And for the most part, our teachers don't run courses on Blackboard. That's just where the curriculum is housed, right? And all of our links are in Blackboard. And so I had proposed, hey, why don't we try writing our curriculum inside of a class notebook, share that class notebook with teachers through Teams, and then the students can do their work in there. Nothing needs to be transferred anywhere, right? And so that never happened. But now, like you said, we're looking at moving to a different LMS. And one of the reasons we chose the LMS we did, which was Brightspace, is because of the way you can design courses and build basically the same idea I had for putting them in OneNote. You can do that within their LMS. And so we had an unfortunate, I don't know if somebody was misquoted or what, but right at the beginning of the school year, there was a local article in a local paper that said, so we're buying this new LMS to replace Google Classroom, and thousands of teachers just learned how to use Google Classroom this summer. So that was a mistake. That's not why we bought it to replace Blackboard, but it's not 100% untrue. We think that nobody's going to say you can't use Google Classroom anymore, but we just think that once teachers discover that, oh, you mean instead of me having to rebuild my course every semester, you're already going to have it built for me inside of the LMS. We think that organically people are just going to kind of switch over to running the courses through the LMS. So it's very much a long-term plan, 2 to 3 years to start getting a significant amount of our curriculum there. We're still going to continue to write our own and own our own curriculum, but that's where it's going to be housed, and that's going to be an easier place for teachers to be able to do the majority. So you mentioned different things like discovery education, or we have the district license for Nearpod, so there's lots of content there in Nearpod. There's reading programs and math programs. So there's always those ancillary pieces of content or sources of content. And I don't know yet, we haven't started into the new LMS yet. I don't know how those are going to fit into the puzzle, except that for the most part, a lot of them are websites, and you can put links to websites in pretty much anything.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So really, where you guys are at is you're still structured around the build your own, the teacher central in terms of distribution.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been, because COVID-19 kind of like wowed people with holy cow, I don't know how we're going to do this, because and I don't know how many complaints you've been hearing about, but the load on the teacher to plan everything and be the distribution point on everything and personalize even before quarantine was heavy, right?
Yeah.
You really didn't have personalization. And then we started to see this massive consumer movement and a lot of opt-out. So suddenly one of our guidance points is, listen, the future looks like it's fully personalized pathways, and there's no way you can get there from continuing to whole group structure everything. So what kind of dialogues did you guys have over the summer as you went into this? I mean, you're big. You guys are a big district, so I'm sure it wasn't as wild as I talk about, but what did you hear?
Yeah, and there's advantages to being big in terms of we can buy everything in bulk. We can go to a publisher and say, unless you put it in this format, we're not buying it, right? But we also say we're like the Titanic. We move very slowly. We turn very slowly. So there's things that we've kicked around for years, like we have something we call Tech Connections that originally it was for our elementary students. And the idea was, well, teachers have curriculum, so they click on the link in the curriculum and get there, but how do our students get there? Okay, we don't like to have students type in web addresses. Accidents happen, right? So Tech Connections was originally, this is where the links from our curriculum go for easier access for students. And then I work secondary, and so for our middle and high school, we're like, well, all right, we don't quite have the exact same need, but we generally have that. But our Tech Connection kind of morphed into, it was a little bit of that, but it was mostly, what else are you using besides the curriculum? And so we would bring together 7th grade social studies teachers, and they would spend a week or two just building a website that's the other stuff that they use. And a lot of it was, I made something for this standard and you make something for that standard. Instead of us both making something for both standards, now we're splitting the work. And at some point, I used to think, when I stepped into my job and saw what this was, like, well, why isn't that just like in the curriculum? This seems kind of redundant. And then I was running a session with where I was training some high school science teachers, and we went out to lunch, and we were having this conversation about, well, wouldn't it be cool if they were all chemistry teachers? Wouldn't it be cool if this high school really focused on Unit 1 and just knocked it out of the park on Unit 1, and this other high school focused on Unit 2, and then we shared our ideas, and then it hit me, oh, wait, that's what Tech Connections could be. I've been poo-pooing this thing and realizing that, oh, here's a place for it. But our elementary school teachers know what that is. Our high school teachers, very few know what that is. So we have an issue of awareness of what our resources are. Like I said, we have Nearpod for our whole district. Well, we have a district library there where you can share best lessons. Again, nobody really knows where that is. I'm training. I'm in charge of Minecraft in our district, which is really fun. But I had a library inside of a Microsoft Teams site where this is where you load your lessons. But again, if you haven't taken the Minecraft course with me and are part of that team, you don't know where that stuff is. So, and this doesn't exactly answer your question of like the next, you're talking about going beyond centralized lessons, but if we could at least make that piece more efficient and give our teachers back some of the time, like if they knew where the central hub was and we were all cooperating together into that pooled resource, then it would free up a whole lot more time for the personalization, for the individualization. And I feel like, the same struggle I always had in special education.
Mm-hmm.
I have students who have issues that prevent them from accessing the curriculum. Am I going to focus on that part, like remedying and remediation, or are we just going to focus on just using accommodations to address that? And I'm just going to focus on the content with them because there's not time to really address both. So it's which one you're going to focus on more. And I feel like, well, if we could at least address that first piece, then we'd have the ability to address the next step. Whereas first, and I guess another way of looking at it is you have the student who struggles so much with comprehension and the lower level questions, and yet we want to bump them up to higher level thinking, but they're not getting the lower level. So how much can you address the higher level, right? So that's kind of where we are. Is as a huge district, we're trying to answer the big question, and really, since remote learning, we really have kind of done the exact same thing where we're not innovating. We are focusing our limited resources on getting the masses up to a certain level in the hopes that then we can get back to innovating and renovating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an evolution, right? I mean, you have to start somewhere. And the first place people started is like move the brick and mortar structure, time, schedule, class, grade structure, teacher centricity online. And then you start to see the bifurcation and potentialities, like you were talking about with all those science teachers saying, hey, why don't you guys do this part? We'll do this part. That's actually the evolution we're expecting, right? So that you raise the direct instruction capacity so that personalization can really happen by removing a lot of the load, right? And how you do that, that's a great next stage where it's a shared construction and sort of a bubble up. I have some ideas on that. But that's, it's kind of what's happening to all the biggest districts because it was too far to go all the way to, 100% digital pathways, only 20 minutes synchronous with teacher a day, right? Like nobody could do that. So their Zoom meeting or Meet meeting most of the time. But the pressure to actually level up and get all the way to, real transition digitally, which is a staffing structure as well, is high because the opt-out is phenomenal. Did you guys experience any opt-out going into the new school year?
What do you mean by opt-out?
Like kids they didn't re-register.
Oh yeah, students. Yeah, I think our family qualifies for that. No, that's not really true because we were homeschooling. We thought this was going to be the year that we were going to stop homeschooling, and then it turns out that everybody's homeschooling. So, well, I haven't seen the numbers. I haven't seen an actual number of registrations compared to previous years. We're still saying we have 86,000 students. Although while you were talking, made me curious about something. I'm wondering for schools that were already, like when they're in person, that were doing things like, some of our charter schools were already doing project-based learning.
Hmm.
And I wonder how much harder or easier it has been to transfer to the digital platform, and specifically regarding the kinds of questions you're asking,
Well,
whether they are at an advantage or disadvantage.
some of them were more advantaged because they were literally using more digital things. They were already fully trained on Microsoft, and they had an LMS, and there's like an hour a day in Dreambox or Mind Research, right? With SD Math. SD Math is like one of my favorites, but in some of these reading programs and Tales to Go, there's a lot of stuff that is dual credit reading, like Vital Source, that came on the scene. And so you see the more advanced, smaller entities, they've got a mix of like 80-20. They're using a lot of algorithmically influenced, modularized courseware, which takes the teacher administration load off, right? So then they can push in a lot more direct instruction, which is the personalization gift you get when you're really automated. But logistics are still an issue because very few places are architected for 100% personalized path, which means you and I are in 6th grade, we're ostensibly in the same level of math, but I've got totally different resources than you. Like that's impossible for teachers to do. Don't even ask, right? They'll try to do some tweaking, but they certainly aren't doing it for all of their kids. They can't leave the world of group, right? So everything's cohorted in group, but so even those smaller ones that we all think are so magical, the truth is the hindrance point is all logistics. So what we're talking about now as Learning Council is where this is headed is the same high order of magnitude workflow logistics that runs UPS that can get, or FedEx and get a box to your front door overnight in 24 hours, right? Or Amazon level logistics, and Uber. Their level of logistics is coming. That's just about all we've been talking about for the last 4 months. How do you really do this, but don't leave behind the live teaching intersection moments you have to have, right? Because you don't want to get rid of live teachers. You just want to isolate the direct instruction that is human and pivotal, right? Not everything the humans have had to do in the past, like being the distributor of all things and the receiver of all the incoming assignments and the blah, blah, and the blah, blah, and the construction of every single lesson. You want to isolate what a teacher is truly good at, right? Inspiration, unraveling your problem with fractions, like the things that a teacher does, that's mutating to be the perfection of human teaching. Is kind of what we're seeing is inevitable.
Yeah, I always thought it was telling that I don't think you can make a straight proportion out of this, but at one point in my life, I did homes teaching for our district. And I always thought it was telling that they considered 6 hours with a home teacher the equivalent of 32 hours in the classroom with your classmates. Now, did they really, is it really apples for apples? Is the same quality instruction? No, but just the idea that we equated 6 hours without class change and without interruptions and without disruptions as equivalent to 32 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing, that the time efficiency should be enabled. That's a really interesting point. Well, this has been amazing. We have a couple more minutes. I'm going to make sure anybody who's on the line right now, raise your hand if you have a question, you have a comment. What you've been sharing with all of the training in Microsoft and with OneNote, I learned from you today. It was awesome. Because we're of course a Microsoft shop. All of my staff are in Microsoft, and there's so much you can do here to bring order. But the one thing where I always fall down is like, where'd you put that file, and how come we can't get this person who's no longer employed with us off the system, like their name is still appearing a year and a half later. There's just things that are always sticky. It doesn't matter what you use. It doesn't have to do anything to do with Microsoft. It can be anything. There's just stickiness, and it's so complicated. And like I said, finding files is one of my downfalls in life.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're like me, where I have 4 different OneDrive accounts, 3 different Google accounts. And then when you throw in that Google has team drives, that every single team that I'm in, every channel of every team has its own drive. And if I want, I can sync any one of them to my desktop. So I could, you know, if I synced all of my online drives to my desktop, I'd have several hundred.
Yeah,
Where
so
is it?
it's like it gets pretty wild, right? But you know what that's also doing? I could talk for this for an hour, but we only have like one more minute. Is people are now mentally mapping the digiverse, right? That's a skill that hasn't been had before. Like, where is this? Where would that be? That's in that drive with that group. Da 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 da. It's actually an unperfected skill in most individuals. It's just it's a new interesting twist. I hope you can join us when Chris McMurray talks tomorrow about the new digital learning experience standards and the new instructional design model from the Edu Jedi, because the standards for students, there's 3 levels. Students is the 3rd level. There's administrators and teachers. One of the standards for students is they need to be responsible for their own efficiency and articulation of use of main tools, particularly ones like, Microsoft or Google. So there's another whole level to the digital learning experience that we discovered over the last summer. So the EduJet, I have a draft set of standards out. Would love your comments on them.
Sure. Yep. And what time tomorrow? I have the schedule. I just want to make sure I plug that one in.
He's on from 12:30 to 2. We're giving him an hour and a half tomorrow because he has so much material to go through, the standards, the new dictionary, and the new instructional design model. So yeah, a lot of time. Yeah, but join or have other people join or a bunch of people join. It'd be awesome. So good to have you. I kind of feel like I cut you off. You were sharing all this great stuff. I apologize.
No, don't apologize at all. It was a different direction, but that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
really
I
good.
wasn't sure I was going in the right direction anyway. So
No, it's really
it's
good.
all
It's been
good.
really good because, you're eye-opening people to what was really happening inside systems, and they sort of calculate in their own minds what's that doing in the teaching and learning level. So it's good. So thank you so much. I'm not dismissing you because you're free to stay on. We're going to introduce Cheryl Abshire now, but thank you again for being our good friend and for all your work you're doing affecting, tens of thousands of kids. Very well done on you, and our congratulations to you and all of your teachers.
Well, thank you. And now I have to figure out how to stop screen sharing, or can you just take that
Oh
from
yeah,
me?
no, I can. How do we stop this? No, I'll take it back from you. But thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tice Miller, founder and CEO of MobileMind. MobileMind is the modern professional learning hub that's designed to enable every single teacher to effectively integrate technology like Google into their instruction. In 2015, I started this company to solve the biggest challenge stemming from mobile and cloud technologies hitting the classroom, and that's the lack of adoption by teachers. The traditional means of professional development were falling short in the face of the complexity and the pace of change of all this new tech, and PD suddenly required a new approach. So we partnered with Google. We spent 3 years doing research and development on how to best address this new and growing issue. Today, MobileMind solves the biggest failure points that prevent teachers from the effective use of G Suite tools, which can negatively affect student outcomes. And some of these include lack of teacher buy-in, no personalization, no time for PD, and now more than ever, the need for accessibility to PD anytime, anywhere. So most districts have accepted that the majority of their teachers weren't completely leveraging their instructional tech tools. And the current pandemic has further exposed this reality. And the new normal means we must ensure all teachers are comfortable with using technology, whether they're in class or remote. Before I show you a short video, let me say this. MobileMind's not like anything that you've seen before. This is not traditional online learning that teachers don't enjoy. We have taken methodologies such as SAMR and activity-based learning with personalized feedback and infused them into the most innovative cloud-based learning solution. So please contact us for a live demonstration of MobileMind and learn how we're impacting schools and districts all over the country. Thanks so much and take care.
Google's G Suite and Chromebook one-to-one programs are revolutionizing education like never before. But despite many benefits for teachers, schools, and students, most schools are falling short of their implementation initiatives due to a lack of effective professional development. But how do you effectively cater to teachers with different technological skill levels, learning styles, and schedules? Designed specifically for Google use in K-12, MobileMind solves these challenges by developing the modern professional learning hub for schools that is personalized, practical, and incredibly convenient for educators. Unlike traditional professional development, MobileMind is cloud-based, so teachers are able to learn at their own pace whenever they have time in their schedule right from our Chrome extension. And since content is broken down into micro-courses with practical applications, progress can be made minutes at a time instead of committing to hours per session. MobileMind is tailored for individual users, accounting for skill level and previous knowledge to challenge each educator appropriately. Learners demonstrate competency by completing performance-based Google challenges and receive ongoing individualized feedback from MobileMind's team of certified educators. Finally, MobileMind's data and reporting allows teachers to view their individual progress while providing schools and district leaders with the key metrics they need to evaluate the impact of virtual professional development throughout their district. MobileMind's combination of cloud-based learning and tailored microcourses result in an average increase of 362% in the use of Google in educators' day-to-day teaching. Visit us at mobilemind.io and request a consultation and demonstration of our innovative professional learning solution.